Hello, hello. My name is John Paul, and welcome to my short presentation on the winter solstice. We'll be looking at this special astronomical event through the perspectives of both science and spirit. Let's get started. Let's begin by taking a trip in our mind's eye around the world during the winter solstice. First, let's go to southern China. Nestled in the foothills of the Maofan Mountain in the city of Guangzhou, China, a family of 4 inhale a rich, aromatic blend of ginger, rice, and sweet beans. As they eagerly anticipate the taste of this year's tangguan, a delicious rice ball soup, they know that from this point on, the cold yin energy will give way to the positive yang energy of light and warmth. Next, let's head east into Scandinavia, on the banks of the Fredrikshamn River in Gothenburg, Sweden, in the hallowed halls of Karl Johan Church, which has been standing since the 18th century. A dozen young women, enrobed in white linen with vivid red sashes, stand in front of the altar. Their heads are crowned with wreaths of pine, and their voices enchant parishioners with the song of St. Lucia. Night walks with a heavy step round yard and hearth as the sun departs from earth. Finally, let's travel near in space but far in time, to Newgrange, Ireland, about an hour's drive north of Dublin. Let's set the clocks back to 3200 BC, more than 5,000 years ago. For context, that's 500 years before Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids of Giza, and even predates Mycenaean culture of ancient Greece. Though we'll never know for sure, I imagine a mystical scene takes place a moment before dawn. A priestess, shrouded in darkness, guides a village crowd with chants. Ancient but familiar tones resonate deep within the stone basin at the furthest interiors of Newgrange, almost 90 feet from its entrance. At the moment of sunrise on the winter solstice, however, a bright beam of light pierces the darkness, shining all the way to the priestess, giving her the magic to start her ritual. The crowd erupts in excited cheers. For 17 uninterrupted minutes, sunlight bathes the ornately carved walls of Newgrange, perhaps preparing the participants for a new year. Even though this scene is imagined, the fact remains that Newgrange illuminates our ancestors' deep connection with the winter solstice. These illustrations further clarify their amazing feat. You can see how the construction of this ancient space perfectly pairs with the solstice light and even accommodates elevation changes. The solstice is so special because it connects all these people throughout all this time. It is our heritage and a shared heritage as Earthlings. No matter how we divide ourselves, we all experience the dark and cold of winter and yearn for the warmth and sunshine of spring. So, what is the solstice? And how can we understand this heritage and connect to it today? Let's start with the science. We're going to look at 3 kinds of planetary motion: spin, rotation, and tilt. You probably know that the Earth spins on its axis. This spin creates the cycle of day and night that we have on our planet. You probably also know that the Earth rotates in an elliptical orbit around the Sun. This orbit takes 365.25 days a year to complete. Now, what you may not know is that the Earth is tilted 23.5 degrees. This axis does rotate every 26,000 years in what's called axial precession, or the precession of the equinoxes, but it is still a consistent 23.5 degrees. To understand the seasons and the solstice, we have to look at how these 3 things, spin, rotation, and tilt, interact. And you could see that interaction very clearly in this illustration. The Earth's constant tilt, as indicated by the purple line through its axis, stays the same as it rotates around the Sun, indicated by the red orbital circle. A concise way to say this is that the Earth's spin axis is tilted with respect to its orbital plane. So how does this turn into winter here on Earth? Well, during the winter in the northern hemisphere, when the Earth is in that part of its rotation around the sun, the sun rays hit Earth at a steep angle, and that steep angle means that the sunlight and heat per square inch or per square mile is much more distributed, meaning there's a lower temperature. At the same time, in the Earth's southern hemisphere, those sun rays are hitting the Earth very directly with not a lot of angle. That means that there's more sun and more heat hitting per square whatever unit, making the temperature hotter. Now that we've reviewed some of the phenomena that create seasons and solstices here on Earth, let's look a little bit at its etymology. The word solstice comes from two Latin words, sol for sun and sistere, which means to stand still. And to explain this, we have to think about this from the perspective of an ancient astronomer. Astronomers tracked the movement of the sun through the sky, and as the season of either summer or winter progressed, the sun would get progressively higher or lower in the sky. To illustrate that, I've got a photo which is known as a solographic photo, which looks at the sun's movement throughout the season. And let's start in spring, and throughout the season, as the spring gets hotter, the sun rises higher and higher in the sky until it reaches the highest point it's going to rise for that season. And then it looks like it stands still for a few days, and then it turns back around, and the zenith of the sun's journey through the sky gets shorter and shorter and doesn't rise as high. Same thing happens in the winter, where in the beginning of fall, the sun is still rising high in the sky, but as winter progresses, the sun rises lower and lower throughout the day until it gets to the winter solstice, where it appears to stand still. And that's why the Latin word solstice is about the sun standing still. Okay, we've fed our minds with the science of the solstice. Now let's feed our souls with some of the spiritual aspects of the winter solstice. And I would describe these as invitations from the winter solstice that come to us from different world traditions, different spiritualities, and we're going to look at them now. The first one I would describe as an invitation to slow down. You see, speed and temperature have an intimate connection. A lot of people think that the temperature is the heat inside of a molecule, but that's not right. Temperature is a measure of the energy of a molecule by how frequently those molecules hit a thermometer. See, it's a measure of speed. Molecules with more energy will move faster, and they will hit a thermometer more than molecules that have less energy and are moving more slowly. So, with that in mind, when the temperature gets cold, it's an invitation to us at the molecular level to slow down a little bit. And of course, we can't slow down too much because we are human beings with certain respiratory and regulatory needs in our bodies, but I still think the message stands that the stillness that happens in the winter months can be embraced by us, and we could find ways to be a little more still in our life and in our thoughts. The second invitation we receive from the winter solstice is an invitation to restore. Things cannot grow and expand forever here on Earth, despite what economists tend to believe. Nature teaches us that there is a season for growth and a season for restoration. People who work with nature and work with the earth know this. If you're a farmer, you plant in spring, you grow in summer, you harvest in fall, and you restore in the winter. And I think, being pieces of nature that we are, it's important to listen to that invitation to restore. So if we've stood a little stiller, and if we have restored ourselves, then perhaps we get even another invitation, and that's an invitation to reflect. The year is coming to an end. The yearly cycle of our planet is beginning its own rebirth. So how about you? What were the highlights for you in this year, and why? How does this year fit into the larger context of your life? Are there things that you want to see more of? Are there things that you want to see less of in your life? The winter solstice is an invitation for us to look at those moments and those actions and think about how we want to behave differently or behave better. I hope you'll consider these invitations from the winter solstice, and I hope you've enjoyed looking at the winter solstice with me. We've looked at some of the science, we've looked at some of the cultural and spiritual meanings, and I'd like to leave you with a beautiful poem about rest by David White. And to accompany that poem, I've got a few photos of some other spectacular places throughout the world that humans have dedicated to the winter and summer solstice. Those are Stonehenge, Tulum, Mexico, the Temple of Karnak in Egypt, Chichen Itza in Mexico, and Serpent Mound in Ohio. Rest is the conversation between what we love to do and how we love to be. Rest is not stasis, but the essence of giving and receiving. Rest is an act of remembering, imaginatively and intellectually, but also physiologically and physically. We often hate ourselves for our procrastination, when it is often only the deeply disguised need to rest deeply enough to reconstitute and reimagine our approach. To rest is to become present in a different way than through action, and especially to give up on the will as the prime motivator of endeavor, with its endless outward need to reward itself through established goals. To rest is to give up on worrying and fretting and the sense that there is something wrong with the world unless we put it right. To rest is to fall back, literally and figuratively, from outer targets, not even to a sense of inner accomplishment or an imagined state of attained stillness, but to a different kind of meeting place, a living, breathing state of natural exchange. Thank you so much for joining me in this little exploration of the winter solstice. I have so appreciated getting to share this with you. If you have thoughts or comments or reflections or corrections, please share them with me. I'd love to learn myself. Thank you so much. Bye.